Yeah.
I think we have to do a better job of that. But who actually qualifies for this
Yeah.
outside of you want
Thank you.
I'm waiting.
You're ready?
I think it's either way. It's not. I mean, it's got that's closest to your office. Yeah, but here's do that part. I mean, I do have some ideas. Warehouse. Like all
All right, I think we're ready to call this meeting to order. So I want to say thanks to everyone for being with us for our first meeting of our new Affordable Housing Subcommittee of the County Commission. So we are excited to be having this new structure to talk about one of the most important issues in the county. And this is a group where we're not going to make any decisions right here, but we're basically going to be an advisory group to the County Commission. But we think this would be a really valuable space to just dedicate more time and attention to this issue and make sure we're developing the best strategies we can to work on this important issue. So thanks everyone for being here. And I think Rachel is going to facilitate our agenda for today. And of course, again, as this is new, I'm sure we'll probably think about different ways we want to do this, but for this first meeting, we'll have Rachel kind of take the lead on talking through the different issues we want to work on today.
Great, so thank you, Chairman Newman, and Commissioners Edwards and Belcher. I would invite either of you, if you have opening remarks, of course, I timed that question perfectly while you're having your lunch, but if you have any words of welcome or greeting that you want to offer before we get going. Great. So my name is Rachel Nygaard, and I'm Strategic Partnerships Director at Buncombe County, and I'm a point of contact for the Board of Commissioners and the Manager's Office in coordination with our departments and community partners on many of the top issues that the county is working on. So as we get into the section of the agenda where we're talking about staffing, you'll see that there's a full team of support cross-functional and cross-departmental who are working on the issue about affordable housing. Many of whom are represented here at the table with us today and will be a part of your meeting. Committee structure is on our list to discuss today because this is the first time that this group has gotten together. So we've got some components of how the group will work together to talk through, and ultimately what that will do is move staff in a position where we've got enough information to go back, work with our attorney crew, who will help us prepare for you some bylaws or some kind of governing document for how this committee will work. We'll talk about affordable housing investments. That was something that we heard the committee wanted to look at as kind of the overall picture of what investments does Buncombe County have in partnerships currently and looking ahead related to housing affordability. Talk through 3 special projects that have been put forward to Buncombe County as requests or are at some level of approval. And then talk about process. To your question when we had a pre-meeting earlier today, Commissioner Belcher, you asked about how do we move from where we are to our future kind of more procedural and we'll have a chance to talk through some future agenda items, areas of focus in the weeks and months to come. And as a public meeting, this meeting will also include council. There you are. I wanted to run this past you because unlike the establishment of the Early Childhood Education Committee, which just got established a couple of months ahead of this group, that committee was established with a full resolutions. So staff had quite a bit of language around purpose and goals to borrow from when coming into the committee. This was decided during the course of the discussion and voted on by the Board of Commissioners to establish a subcommittee. So this purpose is actually what I did is lifted the purpose from the Early Childhood Committee and tailored it toward housing affordability. It aligns with the description that you gave, Chairman Newman, where the group is here to make recommendations around policy and funding on affordable housing. It has additionally components around community engagement and public input. And I would ask if the committee sees that as a core function of the purpose of the Affordable Housing Committee. If so, that will give some direction to staff as far as how we partner with you and bring opportunities to you to implement going forward. How does that purpose sit with you?
So, it's not bad. It's okay. Yeah, I want to see affordable home ownership. I want to see the term home ownership throughout affordable housing because it has been left out. Most of the time when affordable housing, we talk about it when they're related to government, it's affordable rentals. So, part of this is making that an option for people to choose that, but also, how do we make affordable home ownership, more of a reality in Buncombe County. So there's only some things we can do. We can't bring down overall prices in the county and things like that. It needs to be part of the goals, and it could be. So I'm maybe getting ahead.
I think it would be great to include that in the purpose of the committee as well. This is the language around the priorities that Commission adopted back in December of 2017. Is that right? 2017. And as part of that, you all had directed several different areas of focus, which does include the rental piece as well as homeownership, repair, and homelessness strategies. And so until we have a process where we revisit those goals, the assumption is that those same goals and priority would carry through to the work of this committee.
I think we ought to have time to look at those goals too, if we want to, add to that or change that.
We can capture that for a future agenda topic, and we can do that goals of this.
And you don't see that statement as excluding homeownership, it just simply doesn't clarify the fact that it means homeownership plus rental.
Yeah, I mean, I like the term is important, homeownership, that's important. And we just need to make it part of, the language, and I don't know how to do that, I just threw that out there. And we can take a stab at it.
Yep.
And see how you work it.
And we'll bring all of this to you in, like I said, some kind of written document that describes the purpose, how the committee will work, and structures.
Well, that's real complicated, all I said was just put home ownership on it.
Check.
Figure that out.
Any other thoughts before we leave this?
I don't know, I don't want to dig into the weeds, but I do think if we start saying home ownership versus rentals, we're really digging into the weeds of a purpose statement. I see this more as a mission vision of what the committee's going to be doing, and then we dig into those weeds in our strategic goals. So I hate to really start saying exactly ownership, rentals. We're just an overarching vision as to what we're going to be doing.
I mean, I don't think that, and I'm not going to belabor the point, it's just a very simple statement that we need to make sure that we include home ownership, in our goals and in our affordable home ownership, in Buncombe County. And this is not a versus issue, so I don't want to get into that right out of the gate. We only do it, it's 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's just a simple statement to make sure that we include home ownership in our language and our goals. And I promise you the public is okay with that.
I'll look for ways to include that.
Thanks.
In a way that considers your point not to exclude it. So we have the membership identified, where there's to be one member of the Board of Commissioners representing each of the three commissioner districts. And unlike that other committee that I was drawing parallels to a minute ago, there's not an intent or desire to add members of the public as members of this committee. And I want to just confirm interpreting it correctly.
I think that's right.
No.
Yeah, I think with the understanding that these are public meetings, we welcome public input, but in terms of formal appointments to it,
It's a subcommittee of commissioners.
it's a subcommittee of the county commission itself. That's right.
So staff,
Plus, people are, as you know, in each of our districts, we're in Eagles or we're at church or wherever we're at. I promise you, they're letting us know what they think. And so we're supposed to bring all that here and take what you guys bring to us.
and staff is excited to have a venue or sort of a process, a place for the conversations to go on as well. So on the staff angle, staff support, you get to see me standing here at the front of the room, and I may have less daily involvement in affordable housing than many of the other departments. Planning department has 4 members at the table today. Donna, Cynthia, and Matt, and a lot of our affordable housing services programs, and the housing obviously legal, budget, finance, and systems management, as well. And so we are meeting as a team throughout the month and preparing for these meetings. Want to find out, does a monthly meeting schedule make sense to you?
Right now, I'd say I'm okay with that. What do you think?
Me too. I think for now, I think we may reach a point once we've kind of gotten up to speed and kind of in a groove that maybe less frequent is fine. But I think for now, it seems right.
Are you at a place where you think that we can leave today with that schedule in mind, or does that seem like homework to get together later and compare calendar on something that occurs?
I mean, instead of doing it this time,
So we could just take this time and set it at the regular time. I would say.
that works
maybe-
well for me.
I'm here.
I
Yeah.
like it.
2:30 might be better than 2 o'clock, because the meeting that we had prior to this was scheduled to end at 1:30, and we did have to rearrange the meeting. Do you think 2:30 or 3 o'clock?
I'm okay.
How about that?
So this is which Tuesday?
Oh, the third.
Third Tuesday at 2? 2:30. 'Cause it's just going to push you guys to
Yeah, we got another meeting after
your meeting
this.
later.
2:30, so we did an hour and a half, we'd still be done by 4, so we should be good.
What we can do is provide that information on the website. We don't have to announce a special meeting because we're regular. We also like to create a website where you can have your agendas and minutes and meeting materials posted publicly in the same fashion that you're accustomed to your regular board meetings. Is a week in advance a rule of thumb that you would like to have replicated for this group?
Excuse me, 2:30 to 4 on which day of the month?
The third Tuesday of each month. I would say potentially in this room, we need to take a look at the room availability, but this would be on you. So materials up in advance. Typically, I think that we're probably going to be able to work on our agenda in the day prior, so we're not going to communicate with you in between. We do have our legal guidance that we need to keep in mind that it's tricky to meet in between or communicate in between because our committee is 3 people and any 2 of you would then become a majority. So we need to make sure we're conducting our business or committee business together. If at some point you have interest in appointing a chair or point person for a staff liaison to coordinate with, we're open to that structure, or we can, until we propose that we will continue to move
Okay, well, let me just think about that, I don't think we've been kind of really talking that long.
Thanks for thinking about it. So this gives staff information that we'll put together, and we'll work with legal to put into government. So we'll try to know the guidelines. That's the boring stuff, and now it's out of the way. So back to the priority that we looked at in the meeting. Ensuring comprehensive opportunities against that spectrum for affordable and safe housing. The goals of the county, and therefore also what is guiding the work of the committee currently, include rental, home repair, homeownership, including savings and credit building, and homelessness. I think this is where
Good afternoon. So I'm Jennifer Chilton with Budget. And over the last few years, I've had the opportunity, more specifically, to work with Rachel through the strategic partnerships, just in coordination, oftentimes with contract administration, or obviously budget. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit today. So in support of the affordable housing goals that the county has identified, we would like to briefly summarize the various programs and areas of focus across the organization where funding is allocated in support of affordable housing. We will provide you with more detailed information for the specific funding amounts for each program discussed in just a few minutes. But here I want to just give you kind of a brief overview of those categories that we currently focus dollars towards. So outlined here is an overview of Buncombe County's funding in support of affordable housing. Dollars are authorized both during the annual budgeting process and on an ad hoc basis as special requests are supported and approved. The Planning Department manages the first two programs listed. Affordable Housing Services Program is budgeted general fund dollars awarded annually through a competitive process for the purposes of new construction, down payment assistance, rental assistance, and home repairs. Also managed by the Planning Department is the Home Investment Partnership Program. This program leverages federal housing consortium dollars with an annual county match from the general fund to provide the services indicated. Special projects have typically been larger scale investments and have generally been brought to the board as a request off the regular budget cycle. The projects we will discuss in more detail today, as Rachel has also alluded to, are East Haven, Old Haywood neighborhood, and the Asheville Buncombe house. Another area of the general fund budget where dollars are allocated in support of affordable housing goals, such as addressing issues of homelessness, is within behavioral health. County dollars are allocated through the annual budget cycle and are currently contracted with third parties for homelessness support services. With an awareness that the community advocates are requesting that the county dedicate targeted dollars for affordable housing in an effort to provide a full picture of both the existing annual budgeted dollars and the near-term commitments for special projects, I'm going to ask Matt Cable to review 5 fiscal years worth of approved, committed, and planned affordable housing funding beginning with fiscal year 2019. The detailed review of the existing and planned affordable housing funding trend is important information for us to communicate to you all as this committee works to establish processes and determine and or make recommendations on available funding amounts going forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Matt.
Good afternoon. I'm Matt Cable with the Planning Department. I work closely with Nate Pennington, Donna Coughlin, and Cynthia Fox-Clark on the affordable housing initiatives undertaken by the county, which are assigned to the Planning Department. And as Jennifer mentioned, I'm going to be going through the current fiscal year 19 and then the upcoming 4 additional fiscal years, so kind of a 5-year look at funding commitments and potential requests coming forward in future years. I will walk through the first slide in a lot more detail just to kind of familiarize everyone with all different categories, and then they'll be consistent throughout the remaining additional years. So on this first slide, in fiscal year 19, you can note that when we compile all of our various programs together and the funding that has gone into those programs and projects, we're approaching nearly $6 million in investment in affordable housing initiatives with county funds. In FY19, over $1 million was allocated through the general fund. These are recurring programs for the most part, and they include the Affordable Housing Services Program, which is intended to address really all the strategies that are outlined as goals for affordable housing for the county. And it does have various sub-programs, which Jennifer touched on a little bit earlier as well. The Manufactured Home Removal Program, which is included in affordable housing partly because it meets the goal of reducing substandard housing. So it's a removal program for substandard housing that is out in the county. Home matching funds, which as Jennifer mentioned, are match funds for leveraging against other federal grants, which is an important aspect of what we do with those funds. Behavioral health also receives and administers the funds for additional programs. Most of those are targeted at the homelessness reduction initiatives, which is another major strategy. And those include funding for AHO, Project Rebound, and then the City of Asheville Homeless Initiative funds. And then also in that first group of general fund budget is the Strategic Partnership Grant Funds. Within that fund, there were a certain set of dollars that were usually targeted towards housing. That is actually going to sunset in this fiscal year, so when we move into 2020, those funds are not going away, they're just being reallocated directly into the Affordable Housing Services Program. So the next sub part of the table, this shows the prior fund balance appropriation. So in 2019, the county is expending $4.5 million. This is through prior fund balance appropriation for two specific projects that were awarded as grant funds. And they include the Eagle Market Street grant and also the Housing Authority and MHO Lee Walker Heights grant. So those funds have actually already been expended in the fiscal year, so those are complete in terms of that expenditure. And then we also have shown here the program income reinvestment in the Affordable Housing Services Program. And so this one, because it's a little unfamiliar with most people, in the Affordable Housing Services Program, we do administer a loan program for construction. And so in this category, we receive program income. So there are schedules for repayment depending on the type of loan that's received. We receive rental unit construction loan repayment, and those are usually a fixed value over a certain term. So those are very predictable amounts that we expect to get from our partners through that loan program. We also receive home ownership construction loan repayment, and those are based on the construction, completion, and sale of a unit. And so when a unit is sold, the repayment of the loan is made. And there are caveats on time frames, so those are a little less predictable. So we program the funds in 19 from the program income from prior fiscal year. So we're using monies we've already received and reinvesting those in the program.
And those revenues, those programs where it's a loan and they get paid back, those are all coming out of the Affordable Housing Services Program?
Right. And
That's where they originate from, right?
Right. So they was originated from that general fund transfer, then it becomes program income. Then we request permission to utilize the program income to then reinvest in the program. So it adds to that regular allocation. So again, in 19, the total commitments include $5.6 million and spread across various departments, and within that, addressing all of the goals that have been established. So they're all working towards various goals and how those programs are administered. In the next fiscal year, and this one is titled Commitments and Requests, because there are going to be recurring requests to the general fund that we anticipate to remain flat. We're not showing the increased expenditure or the request for additional funds across programs like Affordable Housing Services, Manufactured Home Removal Program, Home Matching Funds Program, so those are all staying flat. And we've also left the behavioral health requests from 19 at the same level of support for those homelessness initiatives. What you'll see in this section would be a general fund request to support the MHO East Haven Apartments Loan Program. The disbursement schedule has not been finalized, and that's something we would be discussing and sending forward the recommendation to the full board on later in this meeting. But that is included herein because this is at least the first request that we did in 2020. So this inflates the general fund budget request by a significant amount and brings that total general fund request to over $1.8 million. This second set again is our prior fund balance appropriation. So in 2020, we've already set aside these funds, but they will be expended is $1.5 million, and that supports the Lee Walker Heights program, or project, I should say. And this reflects a difference from the prior year because the Eagle Market Street commitment and prior allocation is completed in this fiscal year, so you see a decline in that total from 4.5 million to 1.5 million. In the third section, we show the program income and reinvestment. We can't accurately really project what we will receive from the homeownership loan repayments because that's so driven by the construction and sale of the individual units. We can predict the rental unit repayment because again that's more as a scheduled recurring annual payment. So that is reflected as to be determined, but again we will receive an allocation or repayments in 19 and request the board use all of that in 20 to reinvest in the program. So there should be additional dollars that will also be made available through those loan repayments. And then the last section touches on the probable request, which Rachel has already mentioned for the Asheville Area Habitat for Humanity on Haywood Road. Phase 1 infrastructure loan request, which is a $1.4 million request in 2020. And then the Homeward Bound Asheville Buncombe House grant, which is again a pending request for $900,000. So those two projects combined in that fiscal year would represent a $2.3 million request. And for that particular year, again, it's a $5.7 million potential county investment in affordable housing. And then moving into 2021, you'll see the numbers reducing over the next 3 years after 2020. That's still, again, significant commitment already and potentially in place. Again, we're staying flat in the general fund request. The variable here is, and this year again, is the MHO East Haven apartment loan fund request in terms of the disbursement there. That disbursement is $425,000, so it brings that total general fund request to just over $1.3 million. We continue to have a prior fund balance appropriation for the Lee Walker Heights program, and this would be the last year of disbursement on that particular project. And then we have program income reinvestment. Again, it's that same thing. Here you're actually seeing that income increase for the rental unit construction loans because that's when we would anticipate being able to allocate repayment from the MHO East Haven project. So we track it, we receive it, and then the following year we'll be able to reinvest that. And then again, the homeward bound request with the $900,000 additional request. So in 2020, looking at the requests that are out there and continuing programs we have, it's about $2.8 million investment. In 2021, it's very similar, just over $2.7 million request. Again, we see MHO East Haven is that variable in the general fund ask. This time it's driving that figure out over $1.7 million. As the loan request, disbursement will be $850,000 in that particular year. And then the program income reinvestment, again, is the same from the prior year. And this would be the final year of the request for the homeward bound Asheville Buncombe House grant, which is 3 years and $900,000. And then in fiscal year 2023, this is the first time we see a significant reduction based on the existing commitments and programs and existing significant requests. That would bring the total under $1 million, just over $1 million in investment, and would be, the time when you might be able to consider, another significant kind of reinvestment project that would drive those commitments toward. Any questions about any of those?
That's really great seeing the multi-year, kind of what's in the pipeline, what have we already said we're going to do, what projects we know are, so it's really great info.
This is based on what people have asked for. So when we look at this, 972, it's not going to be 972, it's going to be a lot more than that because somebody's going to be asking for, there's going to be another issue, there's going to be something out there probably. So, I hope that we get to a point where, we're driving the amount, we understand what that amount is, people are applying for those. And that is more predictable. So,
This is
good
a
information. Good information.
A good slide. That's kind of what your baseline looks like when you take away all those other major projects. This is really a baseline that's in each year, and this is the first year where you can see it in isolation.
Another question, on the home matching funds, so that's listed as $75,000. So I used to be on the city subcommittee that did this stuff, and we actually were like the lead agency on home funding, but it's been several years, so I forget how it works. So the total amount of home funding, where's that stand these days? For what Buncombe County or our region is getting?
But was around $1 million, but it's fallen off every year. And the county's planning level is usually around $330,000, but that's just the planning level.
Which in essence is the amount that we can be relatively confident will be spent in this community. There might be more, depending on how the Home Consortium, which has people from Asheville and Henderson County and Brevard and stuff like that, allocates it. So a little bit less than $1 million for our several county area, but Buncombe County can count on maybe 300,000. Sometimes it's going to be more than that though.
Sometimes less if you're in Pennsylvania, less or 10% on Madison less. So if there's a tax credit project that consortium has prioritized tax credit projects in those years.
So the 75,000, is it correct that that represents what we as a government need to invest to leverage that home funding for our area? Is that the right way to think about that 75,000?
It's more like a required match.
Yeah. To participate?
Yes, to participate.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, but for that 75,000, realistically, we're going to get several $100,000 in most years from the home program towards these kinds of projects. Right, okay, thank you.
Be good to see that. You know, be good to see that averages so much dollars. 75,000, if it's 300,000 outside of it. I'm not trying to create more work, but it's, be good to see it. Be good for the public to know that. Good for press.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think that's kind of the, and that's going to be the case in almost all of these. The things that we put in are usually kind of a modest percentage of whatever that project actually costs to build, right? So,
I mean, it's like
So-
a conservation easement. That's what drives it. It drives whole decision, but drives a lot of it.
yeah.
One of the reasons that we wanted to pursue this is that you have asked, and the community has asked for us to consider what a investment philosophy might look like in affordable housing. And this is an important piece of it. When we go back to thinking about that purpose statement for this committee, it could be really beneficial to have coordinated, we have someone from the city who was looking to make a remark, but coordinated approach. I was thinking, you mentioned, I think HCD you were probably referring to, which is the Housing and Community Development Committee at the city level, which is sort of a subcommittee of council, very much a counterpart to what this committee is becoming, as well as other kind of key community organizations that draw in federal funds of the housing authority. It might be beneficial for us to look at our funding stream or our funding map as this is county funds, but this is the whole kind of public funds investment, and that could be done in coordination with those community partners. And I'll leave it to your discretion if you want to invite others for the room to participate in the dialogue or not.
Well, I totally agree with that. I mean, part of the idea is, I think from the commission, we want to be a bit more proactive in terms of getting involved earlier in how kind of the county's own funds are invested. But exactly as you say, but also kind of with an eye towards, well, here's what the city's thinking about, here's what the home consortium is thinking about, so that we kind of hope, I mean, we're not going to maybe have the exact same priorities as all these other organizations, but to the extent that we understand what the big projects are in the region, hopefully we can kind of coordinate so that we maximize the benefits in our community and region. And, you know, kind of have a shared strategy towards all
And I
that.
think that there's a lot underway at the staff level. There's coordination, and having the as ambassador at the support the community level can really help us in that from the strategic.
Rachel, we're gonna have to put a mic there. It's really
Oh,
difficult.
man, I'll try to speak louder. There actually is a mic. But I'm just going to be speaking louder, and then we'll get someone to come turn it up.
You're there, Mike.
Is anyone very good at this?
So I have a question. Does the county have any program or programs that are home buyer education programs? That are home buyer education programs?
Does the county have a program? Or-
Yes, do we have any of that?
So home buyer education, do you want to speak to that within affordable housing services program?
Home buyer education.
So when the county, as part of the Affordable Housing Services Program, does offer a down payment assistance portion, sometimes that comes in as a construction loan for a homeowner plus a down payment assistance portion. But part of the requirement is that they are requesting funds for down payment assistance, that the participants receiving funds have to go through a homeowner education course. Typically, the agency is requesting the funds through that program offers the course as well as part of their package in terms of homeownership through the recipient of the documents of this grant.
So that's Habitat, obviously, and Mountain Housing is still doing their homeownership program, right? So
So is that like
on
e-home?
and on track.
Contract with, which is on your list that you saw earlier today, is CCCS, Consumer Credit Counseling Services. It shows there and then it says on track, has a request for financial capabilities and housing program that came through strategic partnerships. We had talked with them in advance about whether that request fit Affordable Housing Services Program as a standalone homebuyer education. At this point, there wasn't an eligible category for that, so they've submitted that request, and it is on your plate for consideration as a potential investment for FY20.
Okay, so is that a standardized, like eHome America or?
Curriculum.
I mean, when people go to, buy a house, they'll Google how to buy a house. Some people will do that. But I'll tell you where that question's come from. We were in an affordable housing summit or whatever it was called. It was a young lady, and I think she lived in Federally Walker. She said something to this effect, that she wanted to buy a home. She said she wanted to buy a manufacturing home. She said, but I don't know how. And so, and that's a big deal today, as Commissioner why I mentioned home ownership. It is a big, it has been a big deal in my 35 years of my life, but to, a path to ownership, for some people, if they choose it, can be a path to independence and can help them in a lot of other things. And so I think that teaching, how to buy a home, how to shop for a home, how much of your debt you should have, how much down payment is required, how to raise that down payment, give them some hope should they choose that option, will actually save the county money in a lot of other places if they choose to live in Buncombe County. I think maybe in the new project, Mountain Housing, maybe y'all have some guidance where you're giving them, how to even move towards homeownership. I think as a county, for those that reside in Buncombe County, if we can help them, those that want that, they're not getting that training from, they may not be getting that training at home, they may not have been getting that training somewhere else, so if we can provide that option for someone that asks that question, we could have an answer for that.
So we will bring you opportunities to provide support for those that homebuyer education through standalone service. It is coupled now whenever there's down payment assistance that's investing, and we work with Habitat for their homeownership projects. That's a component of the services that are for their families, but we'll continue to bring you opportunities.
And I'm saying that there are people that can be helped that aren't applying for that.
At a county level.
You can change their direction when they ask and you have the ability to go. And it may be just something as simple as linking them to that service. It may not be something we wouldn't be able to provide for everybody, but we might provide it for some, but we might link the other people and guide them to that service.
It was about a year ago, we did the affordable housing work session, last March actually, and then we followed with the infrastructure work session. And I've got the application here where I see down payment assistance, completion of a home buyer's education course. So what we did since that time is we provided a portal on the planning website, because during infrastructure we talked about folks needing connections to multiple agencies. So I think it could be appropriate if we could sort of widen that portal on the affordable housing side to include some of those agencies that would provide that service.
Yeah, and I mean, it's as simple as how to buy a home. I mean, you put it on the front of the website every now and then. You got when they get in there, they say, oh, well, I can learn. Somebody can actually teach me what I need to know.
And I suspect a lot of the answers are in the room, but staff will follow up with the providers that offer homebuyer education currently within the community, learn more about the availability of those services, limitations, opportunities to make it more publicized, more accessible, et cetera. Better funded, all those things. So we'll bring you back some opportunities. Can you hear me? This is a place within our agenda where we change from the overall look at housing, affordable housing investments, going into specific projects. So before we leave that, do you have any other thoughts or questions about this? I found that number really impressive and staggering. I didn't realize it would be 5.7 million until we put it on the page. Okay, so East Haven. East Haven Apartments, this is a project by Mountain Housing Opportunities, which is rental housing. We'll develop 95 units of affordable housing in the Squirrel Black Mountain area, targeted to serve people at 60% or less, so low, medium and low incomes within the community. It's a total project cost of nearly $17 million in a project that will begin construction this summer. That's reminder information for you because as members of the Board of Commission, we approved the loan on February 5th. These are the terms of the loan I think already approved as part of your vote. A $2.2 million loan to Mountain Housing Opportunities over that 20-year term at a 0% interest rate with some information about how the annual semi-annual repayments will be included over that 20 years with a balloon balance remaining payment at the end of that 20-year term. And a couple of points around affordability, extending that period of affordability to the full physical life of the building, as well as a commitment that Mountain Housing Opportunities made that evening to not take that exemption, but to pay property taxes on the property. So the county will see some property tax income. There is another action item related to this. So the Board of Commission needs to take under consideration and give approval for the contract. That's in your packet today, a draft of the contract. One major area for your consideration and recommendation related to that contract and included in it. So all of those terms we talked about are included in it. But what had not been decided on your February 5th vote was how the $2.2 million would be dispersed from Buncombe County to Mount Housing. What's that schedule of disbursement? The original request was to spread it over a period of fiscal years that would begin this current fiscal year. Staff has worked with Mountain Housing Opportunities between now and then to look at would it be workable to the project if we were able to include it in our budget planning, because right now we're in the midst of identifying what funds are available for FY20, which begins July 1, and Mountain Housing Opportunities is agreeable to the disbursement schedule that's reflected here, that the first payment would be at construction. Does that say construction? But it's supposed to be that sort of construction. So I think that's a typo.
Yes.
What does it say in the contract?
Yeah, what you said.
At the start of construction.
Yes.
I think that was just not reflected on the slide correctly. So the start of construction would be right around July, and we would get the first milestone or that first payment of $500,000 from at that time. Also likely to occur in the same fiscal year in FY20 would be the second payment, which would be tied to a milestone of 50% completion. And staff has worked from both agencies to identify what does 50% completion look like, how do we know when we reach it, and some of that language is reflected in the contract as well. Another milestone for 100% project completion, which would likely be the fiscal year after that, FY21, and then a final payment the fiscal year after that of $850,000 in FY22 when the project has a permanent loan closing. So this is recommended to you from staff. What we would like for in terms of process is for this to be discussed, affirmed, potentially a real vote. We haven't practiced how we work together as a committee, so we vote to recommend to the overall Board of Commissioners so that when it appears on your agenda for April 2nd, that they know that it's been assessed at the committee level. April 2nd is important in terms of the timeline. That construction loan closing is actually scheduled for April 26th. late April. And so working with getting all of the documents in order as it approaches that construction loan closing, getting the contract approved April 2nd is important, even though the effective date of the contract is July 1. And as Michael Frew was mentioning earlier, there's another follow-up step, which is a deed.
Yeah, this is just administration of the process and the funds and what they need to do to report and to get disbursements, but we'll also need a note of deed of trust.
So, in terms of process, I'd like to hear from the committee both about what you think of this disbursement schedule and how you'd like to have that come out of the committee.
Can you back it up once, sign up for everyone?
Oops,
Okay, so when the vote was approved, the amount was 2.2.
correct.
Okay. I'm assuming all those others add up to 2.2.
I hope so.
I do too.
Somebody check that.
I'm sure, okay, good. So it's interesting that, 850 is after it's complete.
Not having opportunities is in the room and can speak to the rationale for some of that if you want to do that.
Yeah, I would like to hear that because, I would think that every one of the money before, I'm okay with this, but I'm wondering how that works in cost funding. I'm assuming you have other sources that are still in the need.
Can you hear me? It does work with our funding model. Actually, there's just a slight variation in what we proposed to the staff, and that was moving the $500,000 from this current year, which I guess is your 19 year, to the 20 year. But yes, it does work. We're tight on this deal. I mean, it's a very thin deal, and we're very tight on it. And the reason, at the last commission meeting, there was some talk about, having this money be out until, all of it out until the closing, but we really can't do that because we're working with a bank, First Citizens Bank, for a construction loan. They get the project appraised. They can only provide during construction a certain amount of the appraised value. Because the appraisal on these is much lower than a market rate deal, that amount is lower than it would be in a typical real estate transaction. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So this does, you guys can work with this thing?
Yes.
Well, I think it's, naturally, I'm sure we'd all be love to be the last dollars in, and they all be sooner, right? But it seems pretty reasonable. I mean, some of it's coming in fairly early, which will help with construction and lower the interest on the construction loan. But we do put a lot of ours in at the back end, so that does provide some protection for us too. So it seems like a very reasonable approach to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of money in that one year. But, it's starting in 2020 instead of 2019, so that helps.
What it does do is it does condense those two first payments, the 400 or 500 and the 425 into fiscal year 2020. So that's a $925,000
Right.
fiscal year 2020 amount.
Why is there so much time between the project completion and the permanent loan closing?
You want to speak for me?
Yeah. Can I speak?
Sure.
Okay, great. I'll speak loud. It takes a long time to get all of the documents in place, and because we're dealing with a myriad of funders and loans, including NCHFA or investor, which is KHEC, it just takes a long time to put all that in place and the requirements. There are certain requirements as far as the tax credits. We have to have this final document called 8609s, which is an IRS document that gives the confirmation that the credits are solid, that we have invested everything that we need to into the project for the investors to get their credits. And these accountants are working on that for usually 2 to 3 months. It takes them to put that all together and get it in a final form.
Okay. It'd be good, it'd be good to have that going, going forward, what, to help the commissioners understand, particularly when they go to vote for something like this. If they can understand, how complicated it is at each, what you have to do, why it takes so long, to get this.
Our manager is working on a template for cover sheets so that the items on your commission agenda will have a standardized set of kind of background and context information. So when this contract appears on your agenda on April 2nd, there will be a chance for some summary information to accompany it. And I think that would be a great place for us to include some of this context. So knowing that the contract is just coming into your hand, we're not looking for you to review and approve all of the details of the contract, but wanted you to see the draft. It has come out of legal. Mountain Housing Opportunities has seen it. We would look to have that posted a week ahead of time on your agenda, so you'll all have time to review it. But it would be good to have either a vote or informal affirmation of minimally the disbursement structure.
I have a quick question for Cindy. In regards to committing to pay property taxes, how has that, if at all, impacted your funding needs? And will that affect rent rates at all? How are you factoring in that?
No, not at this point. I mean, we will be, because we were able to gain a $500,000 grant from the Federal Home Loan Bank, we actually increased the affordability at East Haven. So that was really good. We factored into paying the property taxes on this. As probably many of you know, the state of North Carolina, if a nonprofit is involved, the county is allowed to waive the taxes. But what we've agreed to do is just accept the assessment based on the Buncombe County tax assessor, which is based on rent. So it is a little bit lower than it would be if this was a market rate deal, but we have that factored into our model.
Yeah, how is that figured? Because I was trying to do the math on what that would, what that was annually.
Our tax assessor, if you want to add any information, but he and our finance officer,
Well, I know they're here, that's why.
have worked together. We can provide you a follow-up document with the details, but any explanation that either the two of you want to add here?
I'll let Keith go first as far as the mechanics of how it works.
So basically, any THC properties in the state of North Carolina have to be assessed at their actual income. We do all apartments income producing properties on the income approach. But the statute also says that property should be valued at market value. But this statute kind of overrides that to say that low-income housing tax credit properties must be valued at the actual income, not market income. So whatever they determine their rents to be, based on their credits, then we will arrive at a value based on that income sold, not what it could be rented for in the marketplace.
So,
Does that answer your question?
well, no.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it would be good when we're looking at all this to see that number, what it is.
You have that handy?
And we did calculate that number out. So the assessed value basically in 2020, if everything was complete, would be about $2.8 million based on actual rent.
Okay.
Everything's fully rented, all that sort of thing.
Okay.
Which equated to about $17,000 in property tax.
That's
And
the
then it
answer.
escalates every year based on the agreement.
Okay, yeah, that's the answer. Great. Thank you. Thanks.
So I'll work with you, Don, to pull a couple bullet points out of that. Sure. And be in our summary sheet.
Well, I think that's important because when we're looking at the cost, the investment is, and we're looking at what the exact cost is, and that comes off of it, so it's coming back. I think it's important information.
That's true, and basically over the life of the loan, rough estimate is about $900,000 in property tax.
See,
That offsets that 2.2.
and if we would have had that information, when we were doing the vote, where we had everybody, wanting to support it, but, some angst around some of the numbers and how the repayment was, and, the grant is line and so on. That's really good information, so. But I don't see, I think since it's, it's passed, it's through, I don't see that as being a disbursement as being a problem.
Comfortable with it?
You want to make that as a recommendation or motion?
Sure.
All right, there's a motion to approve the disbursement schedule as shown. A second. Any further discussion? So we're not approving the loan document because we haven't had a chance to look at that yet. But we're just approving the numbers. But when it goes to commission, they'll approve the actual loan agreement with the numbers.
Yes. The motion is different than what this says,
Except it
but
says
I hear you correctly.
it's a start construction, not construction.
Yeah.
Yeah, because all we're doing is recommending to the commission.
This
It's
grid,
disbursement
that's-
schedule.
Right.
That's my motion.
Yep. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Mayor, first recommendation.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Old Haywood. So here's a project that you've also heard from the community. This is a project that I would have for community. Old Haywood neighborhood, unlike the East Haven project, which is rental, is a homeownership project, which will, in its phase one, create 38 units of affordable housing serving people with 80% or less of area median income. The total financing for phase one is just shy of $7 million, with a request to Buncombe County for $1.4 million. This is currently under staff review. Planning is in coordination, planning department is in coordination with Habitat for Humanity, and we will, with your permission, schedule this as an item for discussion to come to this group in April, that then could be incorporated into budget planning for FY20 with approval from the full board subsequent to that. Questions, thoughts?
Got a comment.
Yeah?
We always got to do the math. 100% of the time. Doesn't matter whether I like that or whether I don't. This is a really cool project. For a lot of reasons. When we start talking about homeownership, and I am not going to hush on that one every time. I'm going to bring it up every session. Yeah, because it's a really big deal, especially with people that are able to take the opportunity. But I want us to think when we're looking at this, I want us to expand our thoughts on what these homes look like. And because a home on the important part of the home is on the inside, it's not on the outside. And in order to be a true advocate for affordable housing, you've got to get that. Because once they're in their home, it's what's going on the inside that makes it important. It's not the elevation, it's not the site, it's not what you call it, it's not, none of that. And so these bigger, phases like this, these little communities, that are being created, I'm just a fan of them, But we gotta always do the math. We gotta figure out, what can we do each year. The only thing I didn't like about the beginning presentation is the amount we were given is the amount we got. You know what I mean? We voted over that. We voted that, and we created that number. It's not a number that we actually said, well, we're going to invest, 3.2 million a year, or whatever it is. But anyhow, this is a pretty cool project.
Like the East Haven project, this will have options for disbursement. One option is for the full, if it were to be approved, for the full $1.4 million to be issued to the organization within one fiscal year during FY20. Another option is to spread that out over a 3 fiscal year period and disperse it at the time of home closings. and that would change the impact on the county budget and investment portfolio. So we're working at the staff levels to figure out what those scenarios look like and what the benefits and drawbacks might be.
Well, I mean, you know, somebody's gonna have to, and I can't make a recommendation for that until I know, if it, the impact it makes on the budget. So I think anytime we spread something out, probably makes sense to do it. But,
So we'll be back with more information on this, the third Tuesday of April.
Well, so, I've got a couple of comments, but maybe we should go to the next slide, because part of it's just, there's this project, undoubtedly a great project, but there's several other big ones, right? And so we have to think about all these sort of simultaneously, right? Because there's only so many dollars. And so this one's being talked about for being considered in May.
Here's what we know about.
So I guess it seems like we sort of need to look at all the big projects together and decide, where are we going to put our resources.
Here's what we know about the actual Buncombe House request at this time. Homeward Bound is revisiting with the city of Asheville the site plan and design, and may or may not have a request for FY20. So there's a question mark after May. Between now and preparing for our April meeting, we should get more information about the timeline. Homeward Bound is in the room and can speak if you would like to do that, but it is because this is such a long-range project, it will not impact, from what I'm hearing, the ability for the project to go forward, for that to be in a later fiscal year. If it's not queued up and ready for consideration at the same time as the others, it could wait a second.
Well, so I would want to kind of hear more details about all of that, just to kind of put my cards on the table. Like this, to me, this is like the most important housing project that we're going to be looking at in the near future. We've made this commitment around ending chronic homelessness. We've made a lot of progress as a community, and really this is like the next really important project that will significantly advance that cause. So my only concern would be, I hear you on the timing around the different decision points might be a little different, but I would not want to make any decisions that might preclude being able to be fully supportive of this. So making other, we've got, the Swanado project is millions of dollars a year for a couple years. Lee Walker is millions of dollars, for several years. So I would be very cautious about making other major decisions until we have a chance to really fully understand this and understand what role the county would need to play for it to be, positioned for success.
I think we could work with Homeward Bound to have a presence in the conversation next month. The project isn't as far along as the Oakwood project in terms of having a performer and all of the level of detail developed in there, but we could have a conversation conceptually for both of these next month as we look at revisit that conversation around philosophy, investment philosophy. Would that work?
I mean, I think you'll have to bring as much information to us as possible. Where is this? Remind me where this is being located.
It's in the city of Asheville. The exact address is.
Homeward Bound, can you chime in?
Sure, it's on Oak Hill Drive, so it's just off of New Leicester Highway, about 3/4 of a mile up from Patton.
On the right?
Yes, just past the cemetery.
Thank you.
Just past the cemetery?
Yeah.
That really narrowed it down in Leicester.
Oh, sorry.
One by the church.
One by the church.
That narrowed it down even further.
Like where I was raised in West Virginia, you go down, turn right at the coal truck, they move the coal truck every time you do that. So,
Just past the railroad tracks.
yeah. So,
Here, a couple other thoughts, just in terms of, thinking about the sequence of decisions the committee will make. So one of the other kind of questions part of why I'm really hoping to kind of have this sort of process is, One of the other big drivers for affordable housing creation is, of course, the low-income housing tax credit program, right? Which the Smart No project is another one of those. And they're great because they, so that was a $16 million project, and we're contributing a couple $1 million. So it's leveraging all, compared to all these other projects, it really probably leverages more than anything else. It creates these, fairly big projects that are permanently affordable. So, and I think the realities from, is that basically Buncombe County, the city, we basically have an opportunity to try to get one of those each year. It's very unlikely we're going to get more than one of those in Buncombe County. I mean, theoretically, maybe it's possible, but it's very unlikely. So in terms of affordable housing strategy in our area, that's a really important program. The local contributions we can make, have a big impact on the potential success of that, because it's not guaranteed we're going to get one of those every year. It's just we have a potential shot at it. So one of the other, I guess, questions is just sort of wanting, for our group to be able to understand when are the key decision points that happen in that process, because that's a competitive process. MHO's been, people might just think of it as MHO because they've been so good at it, but in fact it's very competitive within the community at the state level. So I want to make sure that whatever resources we have to put towards affordable housing too, that we have a real eye on that, so that we make sure we're trying to win one of those kinds of projects each year, or certainly most years. But also, as we kind of talked about at the commission level, we don't want to be coming in at the back end of that process. Like, oh, we've won this project, now commission, please support it. I mean, if we're going to support it, we need to support it early in the process. So I also want to understand, that goes to like the home consortium and CDBG process. I mean, there's other, like, when are those key decisions made too, so that we can think about not being either too late or too early about when we make our funding recommendations.
Is that something that you can incorporate into the process conversation, which is queued up next? Use that as a good working on that? Pass it to me?
Okay, so I want to mention something. Back up 2 slides. I want to go back to the property tax payment.
Yes.
I want to make sure that, I'm assuming this pays property tax.
I do not remember, yes.
Okay, and I know I don't expect you to have the answer right now, but what I'm saying is that when you got it, man.
What do you want to know?
I want to know the annual, and I want to know annual, and we'll figure 20 years, but anyway.
When it's complete, it'll be about $150,000 a year, and then it'll escalate as assessments 3-4 years, and keep those as reassessment.
Okay, so we have to put that in when we're making the decision, because we got to have the right information when we go to make the vote. I could end up supporting it here and say, yes, well, the program goes in, then it goes in the chamber, get all this information, and might not end up supporting it. So we have to make sure that as we're making those recommendations, we've got all the information. And revenue is part of it. So some of them aren't going to be some of them will be repaying the money, some will not be able to repay the money, some will be grants, and we're going to have to look at what portion, if any, of that money we can get back.
I think this one is a long-way combo.
I will note, so this is going to be similar to a project off, Habitat did the Warren Haynes project, so it's going to be similar to that neighborhood. The other thing is too, on a project like Habitat, it's very expensive to begin because there's a number of activities that have to go into the extension of infrastructure. So your stormwater, your water line extension, sewer line extension. So the upfront cost tends to be higher on those. But once they have all those in, then they're pretty quick. I don't mean to speak for Habitat, but once they get the infrastructure in, they move pretty quickly on the construction of the homes themselves.
Yeah, I drove by one yesterday, the Warren Haynes project. I was there for the wall review on the first house. When was that when they lifted the wall, the first house?
Oh, Chandler?
Yeah.
That was in December. Yeah.
Okay, in December.
December.
And there's houses everywhere. Framed up. So how many?
5.
5.
Houses also.
When, just go back to the home question, when does the home consortium make their kind of key recommendations of funding?
We haven't gotten those, we haven't gotten the applications back, but I think we're meeting in April, March.
27.
27.
Later this month, to make the decisions?
Yes.
So we're not gonna have time for this group to really, I mean, I would just say like going forward next year, it would be, since that is almost $1 million, right, it's gonna get spent, I mean, I think that would be stuff where it'd be great for the commission to be able to sort of see, like, here's the different projects being proposed, with of course naturally most interest in what are the ones in Buncombe County that the different groups are thinking about. Because that's really sort of a place where a lot of those groups, they're going to seek funding through that source as well as probably coming to us. So seeing what's going into that process, I think will be illuminating to us about kind of, what's the future affordable housing pipeline looking like in our area, right? Maybe not every project will go there, but many of them will show up there, right? Okay.
So, looking at the current fiscal year 2020 funding process, and I think the committee has definitely touched on a lot of the issues that we grapple with in our existing program. And one of the things I think is important to point out, looking historically back at the Affordable Housing Services Program and how it is operated, we do get requests for large projects within this small fund with the acknowledgement that they have to meet tax credit projects coming. So we do have some awareness that comes through that. I think the issue has historically been the scale of funding available or the scale of projects where the funding is being requested and those being a mismatch. And so we've had different projects come through affordable housing. The old Haywood project has actually gotten approval in the FY19 budget for construction loan and down payment assistance allocation. So that is getting funding, a small portion, it's 240 for 24 of the units within that, but it's specifically for the home construction and down payment assistance, not infrastructure. So we get pieces through that just because of the funding level that's available. Other projects, Lee Walker Heights project came through a strategic partnership grant application process, which really didn't have the funding available to support it, but that's the avenue through which they applied. So looking at that in context of our existing funding process, so the differences between 19 and 20 we highlighted previously is strategic partnership sunsetting their $180,000 traditional or typical allocation to housing, transferring that into the Affordable Housing Services Program. So the money that we would request through the annual budget process is higher for the program in 2020 than it has been. And then we'll add to that, as I mentioned before, program income, if the board approves doing so, but moving that prior year program income and adding that. So our available funding through Affordable Housing Services Program will be increasing in 2020, should all of those budget changes be approved. And so the bigger issue moving forward is taking a look at the Affordable Housing Services Program application for 2020 and how we want to handle that application process and what the application process could potentially handle. And so one of the things, and it's included in your packet information today, was the FY19 application packet that was distributed and available. That gives you an idea. That is something that the board approves annually with our application that we post and request proposals on. And so that was the approved one for 19. We propose moving forward with a largely similar application packet for 2020. We will certainly have to update things like what the median income is and how that drives AMI and what the definition of affordable is. That information will become available in early April. And so we'll be working with the committee on what our application packet will look like going forward. But we feel like the application that's in place is structured such that we can handle the existing product funding, this increased product funding, and if the board were to allocate additional funds for larger projects, that would be an avenue through which we could assess larger asks than what has been budgeted before. But one of the things that we're working to do with the release of the 2020 2020 application is moved into an electronic submittal format. So the county does take grant applications through the electronic portal. So that way we can get the data into our system and not have to pull the data out of submitted handwritten applications. Just because we're at that point that we should be doing that. We're looking at doing an improved set of budgeting forms, so tailoring budgeting forms based on the different sub-programs, because the other part about Affordable Housing Services Program is it's a variety of different sub-programs. And so assessing a tenant-based rental assistance program against a construction loan program for single family using the same budget form, this isn't necessarily making much sense. So using that electronic format, so where you disqualify and people kind of work through the application faster based on the project that they're proposing. And then looking at what capacities that has to do some scoring on the front end, assessing return on investment, for example. How many dollars is the county contributing and how many dollars are we pulling in from other external grant or other sources. So those are things that the application process can do on its own. With any kind of RFP process, there will always be some qualitative assessment that needs to be done about the project applicants, the team that's on the project. So those things would definitely still have internal staff scoring. And we're looking to expand and include a multi-department scoring team moving forward. That would include planning, performance management, finance, budget. Just so that from a staff perspective, we score those. And then sharing that information with the subcommittee, and ultimately getting all of those kind of recommendations onto the board. So we're hoping to do all that in an expedited process, because historically we haven't released the RFP until the fall. And timing is a really critical issue for all housing projects. And as soon as they have access to funds, then they need the other funds, and the other funds, everything needs to fall into place. And with any kind of affordable housing project, the budget is a moving target. And I think that all of our community partners would attest to that they are constantly working and reworking their budgets. So we want to take a cue from that and make sure that we're timing out our application processes correctly, that we're thinking about the budget that's available and what kind of projects we'll see coming in through the avenue of the application process. But one of the things, too, that will be coming to the subcommittee on, at least in a first pass with this application, would be guidance on how we might distribute the funds in those subcategories. For example, in 19, the board is very specific that they allocated additional funds for emergency repair program services, and we should target emergency repair. And so if we have a $600,000 pot of funds, is there guidance that the Affordable Housing Committee wants to give us on? We really want half of that to go to construction projects, and we want at least a third of that to go to rental-based assistance, or tenant-based rental assistance program. And then the other part about that is that we can have kind of an overarching guide, but if you don't get the applications, then you have to make other decisions. So this is another moving target kind of application process, where we would have to make some of those assessments. But we do feel, and I hope that the subcommittee has the opportunity to take a look at the application process and think about how that is structured. But we feel like what we have in place is a good application process that can be expanded within an online portal for the application process to occur, and with specific budgets that can be submitted that will do some auto calculations for you. We'll assess whether the income pro forma is showing pending or committed loan funds, like where the project is in the process. So that's what we're looking to do moving forward in order to assess the projects more fairly and equitably, and also be really transparent about how the projects stack up against one another that we're doing applications on.
So we have just a couple more minutes. We're going to take public comment, so we need to kind of wrap up our visit. What else, Rachel, do you have that we wanted to get through before we do public comment?
I did want to mention a couple of housekeeping things that I didn't say at the beginning. There is a sign-in sheet which has a place for guests to sign in as well. That's a way that we can gather your name and contact information if you'd like us to keep you posted as we move forward. Future agenda items, I jotted down a couple that came up during our discussion today, which included the review of the strategic priority and goals, as well as what Matt was talking about, scheduling a time for this committee to weigh in on distribution of funds across programs for next month. It sounds like we're looking at Old Haywood and after Buncombe House, looking at the information we use to projects. Is that the time that you want to talk about the FY20 disbursement priorities as well? Or are there other specific things that you want staff for us to bring from this list or other ones for next month?
I don't think we have to do it, next month, but I'd like to know how our investments on fixing up, some older, stick-built and manufactured homes. I'd like to know, what kind of impact we've made on that. It can be just an incredible turning point for families, just a small family with houses. I'd like to know how that, worked out and if we look at expanding it.
And that dovetails perfectly with the third item on there, which is around performance measures and reporting. We'd like to give you a dashboard, a set of reports, a place that you can look for that latest information on regardless of what investment philosophy is adopted, scaling up or keeping at current level, we want to be able to report back to the board and to the public around the impacts that this portfolio of big investments is making on the community level, as well as those performance measures that are incorporated into specific funding contracts, like staff capital that we want to provide visibility to the community. Great. Well, we'll get in touch with you around the draft agenda, if you have follow-up thoughts. I'm your point person and staff, and I've got the full team of other departments coordinating, and we'll work together to follow up on these conversations and discussions today, and bring in our agenda.
Any other last comments from me? Just a lot of great information. One thought on this, and we don't have to, just be an iterative process, I think, where we don't have to change everything. But, going forward, part of what's interesting, just looking at the numbers, is that there's a lot more being invested than when people just think about the Affordable Housing Services Fund. It's relatively modest, but in fact, there's, $5 million of projects that are going to get funded each year for the next couple of years, probably. And I don't know, for years into the future, maybe the county's going to spend more, maybe the county's going to spend less than what we're looking at for the next couple of years. I personally think that it's probably going to be in this, it's probably not going to drop off. It probably needs to stay in the same neighborhood, or maybe even grow. If it is, my sense is that we should. One thing I would say that just doesn't kind of feel right is to kind of say like there's this sort of special projects, right? Like there should probably just be, as a subcommittee and a commission, we need to just think about realistically how much can we afford to invest towards these issues, right? And then really have that pool of funding and all the different projects would sort of go through this. So it's not just like there's Affordable Housing Services Fund and then some special project that gets actually more money than everything else combined. So that'd be one just high level feedback, is I think we probably need to go towards sort of a, whatever we call that fund, Affordable Housing Fund or Affordable Housing Services Fund. I think realistically we need to recognize that we're actually spending much more than that as a community, as well we should, and have a process whereby, there'll be a lot of small things funded from that, as well as some very, big investments funded through that, but think about it in a really integrated way. Just sort of first impression from the meeting today.
It's a great step toward consolidating that, and we can have further step toward that integration.
Yeah, at some point too, I'd love to look up there and see a map that showed the points, how many families that has been affected, how many families have been killed. in Buncombe County, where is that? I mean, we know, you'd learn a lot if you did that. I mean, you know, is there equity in the distribution of money? You know, are we reaching the poorest neighborhoods, or we, you know that.
And to take that a step further, where is there still a really high level amount of need? I mean, it's everywhere, but where are we still missing in terms of places within the county?
Because we have to be the voice, you know, for those people.
Well, it's a good point, and one thing we ought to consider, and it's a major policy discussion, you know, we had such a good set of work sessions last year, is the idea of a comprehensive plan, which would evaluate things like infrastructure, especially in the areas where we see our future growth. Candler, Lester, Swananoa, those are 3 areas identified as the potential to expand infrastructure to. Also, it would help identify these areas where we might be, you know, missing certain target populations. And there's the ability to sort of knit together all of the different plans we've been doing as standalone plans, i.e. land use, affordable housing, transportation, infrastructure. So it's a good way to collectively look at what are the priorities of the county, because essentially we are at a crossroads on so many different situations, and folks are approaching you from multiple different avenues, requesting funds to further their causes, and they're all good causes. But how do you sort of prioritize those causes?
There's an item in your packet for reference, which is a snapshot of housing need in Buncombe County, which came from the North Carolina Housing Coalition. And there's another item in your place, which was brought to us by Mountain Housing Opportunities today. We are beyond our scheduled time, but we want to make sure that there's an opportunity for public comment before we leave. Chairman, if you want us to have people come to the podium, we could do the 3-minute timer, however you want us to look at.
That's something,
Yeah.
yeah, all right, sure. We do appreciate everyone being here today. And, is there anybody who'd like to talk to us for a few minutes about anything? Stop, sure.
Thank you. Thank you for initiating this committee and going through a deliberative process to meet the need in a thoughtful and informed way. Thank you for the decisions you made here today. You have invested just in our properties that were referenced in the slides in 369 apartments. And over our 30-year history, you've invested in 667 apartments that are already leased and managed by Mountain Housing Opportunities. Also, you've invested in over 400 homeowners through construction and lending by Mountain Housing Opportunities. You don't hear about our homeownership as often because our homeowners have cash on average monthly income that's about double the monthly income of most of our renters. Our renters mostly have incomes between $10,000 and $25,000 a year, with an average below $18,000 a year. Our homeowners are mostly between $25,000 up to the mid to high 30,000s of income. So roughly double the income availability. So most of the money for home ownership in our program comes from the bank for a mortgage, or from the bank for construction lending that's taken out by the private mortgage. Only the money that we leave in by financing for long-term soft second mortgage financing, only that money is needed through public sources like Buncombe County. It's a big difference in the financial model for creating home ownership opportunities versus rental opportunities. I sent you a link to the On-Track Financial home ownership home buyer education program.
Yeah, I saw that on my phone. What took you so long?
It's really excellent.
Just did it, man.
Yeah, it's a very excellent program, and they partner with us in all of our homeownership programs. I would direct your attention, if you would, to the chart of the housing need, and especially the back of the first page. If you would go to the back of the first page, this is the area where I hope we will focus our rental efforts for renters that are paying more than half of their income for rent. And some of these renters can be served through homeownership, and those are maybe about 1,500, but most of them, almost 6,000 of these renters, basically just need more affordable rental. They need permanently affordable, income-restricted apartments, because their income is not, even through our programs, their income is not going to reach the level of being able to afford a home. So finally, I would just ask you to set goals against these numbers of need. This is if you include the front page, which has home ownership as well, this is the affordability challenge for Buncombe County, and I would ask you over time to set goals against this measure of need. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Yes, sir.
Sure, hi, I am.
And just so everyone knows, you've got 3 minutes.
3 minutes, sure. Paul D'Angelo with the Community Development Department over at the City of Asheville. We just wanted to thank you all for having this meeting and let you know that we're available as a resource and a partnership to let you know efforts that we're doing over at the city. We've had some really good conversations with Donna and Nate over the last year for sure. We've got some new initiatives going on in other areas we're looking to partner, gaps that might be out there that we might be able to fill. One of the suggestions and things I've talked to Don and Nate about is a couple partnership opportunities is, getting on the budget for the future and how exactly that money can be allocated. And the 9% tax credits, where we have some good folks that go for those each year and are competitive. There's also the 4% tax credit, which are not, but they usually come with a gap of about $5 or $6 million. So something we're talking about the city, is there a way to partner with the county on something like that every 2 or 3 years? If it's $2.5 or $3 million every 2 or 3 years, usually those apartments, based on economies of scale, it's going to be about 150 to 200 units. It's only about a $15,000 to $20,000 subsidy at max, so it's very low, but we could make that kind of a competition where every 2 or 3 years the city and county collectively can have that funding together and get the best 4% tax credit deal. There's money out there, it's not competitive. But that's one example of things we'd love to talk to you guys about as this committee moves forward. And if any representatives from us, we've seen a couple other members from here, or with HCD, Housing Community Development, just let us know, but we'd be happy to be part of a collective effort.
That's great. Who's on HCD, do you think, from the council?
From City Council right now, it's Julie Mayfield, and it is Shanika, and it is Keith Young.
Great. Thanks so much for being here.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to echo what Scott and Paul said. Thank you for putting the focus on this. What struck me as you walked through this meeting was, yes, there's a tremendous, set of requests in front of you. It's easy to kind of get overwhelmed with the big numbers. But I also noticed that, in the 3 projects that we looked at today, there's really a historic opportunity for the commissioners to invest in Buncombe County residents across the housing continuum, from folks who are experiencing homelessness in our county to affordable rental and home ownership in the 3 projects that were presented today. They also, if I'm understanding the geography on all of them right, hit each one of the different commissioner districts. So I think it's a really great chance as this committee rolls out to take a bold stand that serves the whole housing continuum and creates wins for our community in all different geographic regions. So I just want to put that out there.
Yes, sir.
All right, Jonathan Stansel, I'm the Homebuyer Program Director at On Track Financial Education Council. And I walked in here just as somebody was talking about homebuyer education. Sorry, I didn't meet earlier. I'm here if you have any questions.
Great. Mr. Rice.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board there, we live in a tourist town, and tourism has took away what we're talking about right here for these families. It took away the jobs that we used to have and prevented us from having affordable living style in Asheville and Buncombe County. I think you need to go a step further. Instead of saying the city and the county and what can we do, we need to go to the Chamber of Commerce and talk about the room nights that they get and this tax money that they get, and see if we can't get them to help with the tax money and figure out a way to do that. We got a lot of money coming through on the room nights. If tourism is gonna take it away from us, we need to have that agency helping with the taxpayers. I hope that gets Joe moved on up to the chamber. There are other agencies, we need to be looking further. There's a lot of small businesses, and I'm talking about business that has money, that I think would contribute to this if we'd make a concerted effort to hook them up. Thank you.
Right, anybody else? All right, well, thank you all for being here today, and I think we got a lot done. Let's give Rachel a round of applause. All together, so we're adjourned, and we'll be here next time.